Okay, hey, what's up, guys? I'm Matt from Memento Mori Marksmanship, and this video is about what you need to know when you first buy a handgun. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the fundamentals of firearm safety. We're going to talk about equipment that you need when you go to the range, okay? And we're going to talk about range etiquette, okay? So, let's talk about the fundamentals of firearm safety right off the bat. Okay, so let's talk about the 4 rules of firearm safety. Treat every weapon as if it was loaded. Do not point your weapon at anything you do not intend to destroy. Keep your fingers straight and off the trigger until you have sights on target and you're ready to shoot. And know your target and its surroundings in the foreground, background, and to either side. Okay, so how does this apply to the use of the handgun? Okay, so treat every weapon as if it was loaded. In a nutshell, treating every weapon as if it was loaded is essentially like applying the other 3 rules of firearm safety at all times, with the additional addendum that we are going to check the handgun every time we pick it up. Okay. So when you are at the store and you are looking at handguns, the guy behind the counter, you said, hey, I want to look at this Walther PDP-F. I'm not sponsored by Walther. I'm not sponsored by anybody, but this is a gun that I have. You said, yeah, I want to look at that gun right there. And he's like, cool. He gets it out of the case. He picks it up. He removes the magazine. And he should have locked the slide to the rear and checked 3 things. I'm going to point with my pencil if you would like to come over here, please. The 3 things that I am checking, make sure it's in focus. The 3 things that I am checking are the chamber, the magazine well, okay, and the bolt face, okay? The chamber, the magazine well, the bolt face. I'm checking these things for ammo, obstructions, things that are out of place, okay? What I like to say is nothing in there should be shiny. So if you have flecks of brass, or God forbid, flecks of the bullets themselves in part of your handgun, that is an issue. You should not be loading that handgun if you see something like that. Call for help. I'm just kidding. Okay, so let's talk about the mechanics of the gun. That is to say, what buttons do you push to make it do the things? So, on most striker fire handguns, you're going to have a push button magazine release. This button right here is the magazine release button. Okay, I push this button with my firing hand thumb. This is my firing hand. This is the hand that holds the gun, okay, and pulls the trigger. I push that button with my thumb, and the magazine should just drop out with the pull of gravity. Okay, this magazine is empty. That is not to say that this is not sufficient confirmation that the handgun is unloaded. Okay, I am then going to lock the slide to the rear. I do that by doing 2 things simultaneously. This bar right here is called the slide lever, okay? It is used for locking the slide to the rear and also releasing the slide, okay? This is the slide. This whole piece right here is the slide, okay? I'm going to push upward on the slide lever with the knuckle of my thumb. While doing that, while maintaining pressure, I am going to pull on the slide all the way to the rear, and then I'm going to let go with my non-firing hand. Once that slide has in fact been locked to the rear, it will stop. I can remove pressure from the slide lock and I can stop worrying about it. It will remain in this position until manipulated, okay? Again, once I'm here and the slide has been locked to the rear, I'm conducting that 3-point check of the chamber, magazine well, and bolt face, okay? Once I'm loading the handgun, I can do this. These are dummy rounds. They have a real bullet, real brass, but no primer and no powder, okay? So I can shoot this and it will not go off. I can pull the trigger with this in the chamber, it will not go off. That's just for your information, okay? So, when I'm loading this handgun, I like to keep the pointer finger, my index finger, pointed at the tip of the first round coming out of the magazine, okay? With the base plate in the palm of my hand and the tip of my finger right there, once I point my finger into the magazine well where I want the magazine to go, it's a very simple and smooth process of just pushing the magazine up into the magazine well. So I load it like so. To drop the slide, I apply the opposite pressure that I did to lock the slide, right? So I'm going to push down on the slide lever, and that will send the slide home. That is to say, it will allow the slide to fall forward. Now what that does is it chambers the round. So right now, if I were to press check this is called a press check, I'm going to push the slide to the rear just enough to where I can see into the chamber, okay? And right now I see brass, which means that this round is in fact loaded. So at this point the weapon is loaded, so I need to make doubly sure that I am obeying all of the rules of firearm safety. I am not pointing this weapon at anything I do not intend to destroy. I am keeping my finger straight and off the trigger until I have sights on target with intention to shoot. And I am aware of my target and its surroundings in the foreground, background, and to either flank. And what that means is essentially like, what is behind my target? What is in front of my target? That's fairly obvious. And what is to either side, okay? So like, if I am at an outdoor range, for example, okay, there is a lot of trust involved. So we're getting right into the etiquette piece, but we're going to touch on this in more detail here in a couple seconds, okay? If I'm at an outdoor range, there's a lot of trust involved, okay? Because for me to hang my targets downrange, okay, for me to mark my targets for zeroing purposes, scoring, that kind of thing, I need to physically go up and touch this, right? Which means I'm in front of the firing line. The firing line is where people are shooting from, and we're all shoulder to shoulder on line with spacing, okay, in order to make sure that no one is in front of anybody while shooting, okay? When I am going down range to manipulate my target, I need to ensure that everyone around me knows that I am doing that. If I fail to do that, I am putting everyone in a really awkward position because they can shoot me on accident. So when you're at an outdoor range, be doubly sure that everyone around you knows that the range is hot, that is, bullets are going down range, or the range is cold and we are now checking targets. There should not be any confusion on that between the people on the firing line. And all of that comes from trust and communication. Okay. So we talked about the fundamentals of firearm safety. We touched a little bit on etiquette. We're going to get really particular about the equipment that you need to bring to the range the first time. So if you come over here, you can see when you bought your handgun, it probably came in a box very similar to this, with equipment very similar to this, okay? I have a gun lock. I have a sight adjustment tool. I have a chamber flag. I have a couple of magazines with a magazine loader. And I have my handgun itself, okay? You probably also have some paperwork, like the user manual back here, okay? Oop. So this is all well and good, and this is what you need, you know, to be shooting the gun per se. However, it's not enough to really go to the range, have a good time, while also being safe. Okay, so the things that I tell everybody needs a few basic things when shooting a handgun, okay? Or any gun. With any gun at all, you need ear pro, okay? Earplugs that are rated for loud noises, okay? Ear muffs that are rated for loud noises, okay? You definitely need, at a minimum, an addendum to that, eye protection, sunglasses that have a ballistic rating. Any gun store will have glasses for shooting, okay? Just ask the guy behind the counter, and he will happily direct you to the cheapest eye pro that you could possibly get. However, I would also say that, like, if you like to wear Oakley sunglasses, if they're like one of the ones that are for sports stuff, they're probably at least shatter resistant, and so those are probably good to go. So the sunglasses you already have, if they're not made out of glass, they're probably fine, okay? So any plastic lensed glasses are going to be just fine for most people. Okay, so that's the safety, the personal protection equipment that I recommend, that you definitely need the Ear Pro. If you're shooting a handgun, it is my personal opinion that you need a holster, okay? When going to the range, depending on the range, if you're at an indoor range, it's going to be like, imagine a stall or a cubicle where there's a bench in front of you, a table, and you can put your weapon on the table. Let's say this is downrange. I can do all of my shooting and whatnot, okay, and loading right here from the table, okay? And a lot of outdoor ranges have the same thing. But if you go to a range that doesn't have those things, you need a holster, okay? The holster is where the gun goes when it's not in your hands, okay? If you're working off the back of a tailgate of a truck or a folding table, okay, the weapon can be bumped, it can be dropped, it can be forgotten about, okay? I have seen all of these silly things happen, okay? And the people who have a holster on their belt or in their pants, okay, clipped to a belt, okay, they never have that problem, okay? A concealed carry holster is like pretty good. Most people are probably buying handguns that are like more appropriate for concealed carry than they are for like competition or duty use. And so like a concealed carry holster that is an inside the waistband holster like this one is going to be just fine, okay? And you can do the Googling on that. The things that are popular tend to be fairly reliable with a couple of exceptions. I recommend 3 companies when it comes to holsters, okay? There's stickers here. Vedder Holsters, okay? It's Vedder, Tenicor, okay? I'm not sponsored by any of these people. I also recommend Tier 1 Concealed. They make this holster. They make the holster that I have on my belt right now, okay? The key to a holster, and I recommend that you get a Kydex holster because that's what's going to give you the reliability and repeatability, is like, it needs to completely cover the trigger guard, okay? So like there's no way for me to get my finger into the trigger guard to manipulate the trigger while the handgun is in the holster, okay? That's very important, okay? It needs to be like form-fitted to the gun. A generic holster will not accomplish that protection of the trigger guard effectively, okay? A fabric holster, something made out of nylon. These are things that you'll find at Academy or like some other sporting goods store. They're just kind of like for firearms of a certain size. It doesn't really matter what model it is. If it's a certain like distance between the top of the slide and the bottom of the trigger guard, it will in fact fit into that sleeve. They're usually called holster sleeves or sleeve holsters, something like that. I do not recommend those because, like I said, they don't repeatedly, consistently lock the gun into place and protect the trigger, okay? So Kydex, it's Kydex with a K, okay? That's what I recommend for a holster. And you can get a Kydex holster that is good to go. This holster right here was $60, okay? I think that's fairly reasonable, considering that you're probably spending, $500 to $600 on top of, or like already. Another $60, like all of the equipment that you see here on this table would probably cost you about $700 if you were to buy it at full price, okay? And like, yeah, I understand that that's like a pretty big commitment for a first-time buyer, but like, you only have to buy one holster one time if you buy the right one. And if you buy from Vedder Holsters, Tenicor, or Tier 1 Concealed, you can get an affordable holster that will last you for a very, very long time. I have had holsters that are made of Kydex that got hot in the back of my truck and actually like deformed, and they did not take the pistol anymore. I couldn't get the pistol to fit in there, which is a very awkward thing to find out when you put that thing in your pants, you load the gun, and then you try to put it in there for a day of concealed carry, and the gun will not fit in the holster, and that's like a very emotional moment. You know, you're very sad when you find that out.
Especially since your wife got you that holster for a basic training graduation.
That's true. Yeah, she did buy me that. Anyway.
R.I.P.
Also, that was
Probably,
like a $120 holster.
Yeah.
So the price tag is not necessarily indicative of quality. It's just indicative of branding. And let me put it this way. If your favorite action hero has a brand name holster as part of their like a novel has a sports brand basically, and it's like a big firearm company or a big holster brand, and they make custom holsters, you know, for this author who also writes action novels. Like, don't use that as a metric for what you need to be spending your money on. Spend your money on the stuff that like police officers who work every day wear, the guys who do competition shooting for a living. Like, those are the people that like test their stuff and like actually use and abuse it, and those are the people that you need to be going to. So we talked about firearm safety, we talked about equipment, and now we're going to talk more in depth about range etiquette. Okay, so at a range, you know, with the exception of like, you know, the berm at your buddy's ranch where you go shooting and drink beers in the summertime, that's a range in that you're shooting at things. However, it's not a range in the sense that people have set up a business. There's liability insurance involved, and like there's people you don't know shooting firearms to your left and right. Okay. When you're shooting a firearm with strangers, there's a lot of trust involved. I've already talked about this, right? For all of this like subculture society to thrive, everyone needs to be obeying the rules of firearm safety to at least the spirit of the law, okay? And they also need to communicate consistently with each other. We'll put up a picture of a traditional like indoor range and then another one of an outdoor range for references, okay? At an indoor range, you're going to have stalls that are in the shape of a cubicle, okay, with a table in front of you. In front of that table, that is on the downrange side, there is a hanger, okay, that you can clip your target to and then run a dial or push a pulley system down, and it will push that target down to a certain distance, and that is where you shoot the target from. In that case, indoor ranges like that, excepting when something goes wrong downrange where they need to fix something, they're almost always in a hot status, because you don't need to walk down in front of the firing line in order to mess with the targets, because they will come to you when you press a button, right? However, if you're at an outdoor range, they do not have any of those high-tech widgets because it's really not necessary. You are going to have a target posted to a post, or I should say stapled to a frame or clipped to a frame or something like that. And you yourself, as the shooter, are responsible for setting up your own target, okay? So that means that you have to go downrange, fiddle with the things, and then walk back to your firing line before you can start shooting. So like, for that to happen, what you need to do is you need to communicate with the people around you to ask them, hey, can we go cold right now? And what that means essentially is we all need to agree to stop shooting. We need to unload and clear our firearms, leave them on the table, step back, and then look to our left and right and confirm that we are in a cold status, okay? At that point, we can walk forward and mess with the target as much as we want, given the assumption that like we're all doing this like as a courtesy, right? So like, have a plan for how you're going to hang your target, okay? Don't assume that the range you're going to has staplers, clips, any of that, right? Like, another thing that you can get on Amazon that is like, ignore the bullet hole in this, not my fault, okay? You can get gator clips like this. These are kind of heavy duty on Amazon, and they will go onto a 1x2 board, which is going to be like 90% of the time when you go to an outdoor range and you're shooting paper targets or cardboard targets, they're going to have 1x2 inch posts that will serve as the uprights for the target frame, right? And you just clip that to your target, you clip it to the post, okay, and it will sit there like that. And normally if it's a full-size USPSA target, this is a micro USPSA target, it will be double this size. I will have one on one side and one on the other, okay? Be aware of what your plan is before you come up to hang your target. If you walk up to that freaking thing, your target frame, with your target in your hand, and you try to, like, you go up to it and you're like, oh wait, they don't have staples out here. Oh wait, I have to bring my own 2x4s? Wait, what? You know, like, all of those things are things you need to find out at a minimum when you first show up to the range, okay? Ask the guy that you are, you know, usually you go to the range and there's a guy running some desk or something, and he's gonna, you know, charge you a fee to use the range, sign a waiver or something. You need to ask him, hey, what kind of target stands do we have at this range? What kind of targets do you guys allow at this range? And he'll, if he, you know, if this range is run by professionals, they'll give you a straight answer. However, if it's a range where it's literally just a farm with a dirt berm that you're shooting at, they probably won't have a straight answer for you, because there probably won't be a solution that they have. They probably don't have target stands or targets available in that case. It's probably a very low ceiling, very high, like, trust environment, right? Low ceiling as far as, like, they don't put any investment into their supporting equipment for the shooters, right? It's on you to bring the stuff. In that case, like, figure that out before you go. So, yeah, read the online reviews, call people, talk to your friends who are involved in firearms, okay? It is my personal opinion that nobody should be going through this process alone. And so ask questions, because nothing is a stupid question as far as guns are concerned. I guess we can talk a little bit about ammo real quick. So let's talk about practice ammo and, like, self-defense ammo, okay? So here we have a good example of practice ammo, okay? So if you look at this box, okay, there's a couple of things you're looking for here. On the side of this box, okay, it says 9mm Luger, which is the caliber that we're shooting, okay, 124 grain FMJ. If you are shooting at targets, okay, for fun, for training, for competition, FMJ, which is going to look a lot like this, okay, that's full metal jacket, that is what you want, okay? It's cheap. That's why you want it, because it's cheap. Literally no other reason. There's nothing to do with reliability or performance or anything. It's cheap, okay? It's cheap and it works. However, if I am buying a gun for self-defense, okay, and the addendum that I have a sight system, whether it be a red dot like this guy, or maybe a set of adjustable iron sights like on both of these, okay? I need to zero those. That is to say, I need to calibrate the optic or sights to the impact of the rounds at a certain distance. To do that effectively, I need to use the same ammo that I'm going to be using when I take this gun out for concealed carry, okay? Again, not because I'm expecting to use the handgun on someone, okay? But that is to say, when I have to use this in a self-defense situation, that is like the highest risk and highest liability on myself, because I am responsible for every shot that I take with my personal defense handgun, okay? So if my sights are not zeroed to the ammo that I am using for work, if I'm a cop, or for self-defense, if I'm a prepared citizen concealed carrying, that's a deficiency on my part, right? Because the point of impact for a bullet like this, my practice ammo, is not going to be the same as the ammo I use for self-defense. It's just not, because it's going to have, I'm going to use two different kinds of ammo. I'm going to use more reliable ammo. One, more expensive ammo that's higher quality for self-defense than I am going to use for this. It's going to have a different muzzle velocity, it's going to have different flight characteristics, which is going to change where it impacts on the target, okay, at the given distance, okay? So yeah, so in a nutshell, you need to zero your gun to the ammo that you are using for the purpose that you are using it for. If your gun is only for competition, just use it, just zero the gun to the competition ammo. If it's just for, like, you know, range fun gun stuff, it doesn't matter at all. If you're using it for concealed carry, for self-defense, zero it to the ammo that you are going to have in the magazine when you're concealed carrying. Okay. So my name is Matt. This is the Memento Mori Marksmanship channel. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this, please tell me that you liked it in the comment section. Share it to your friends if you feel like this is applicable to them. Yeah, so remember you are immortal. Have a good one.